What's going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, of course, we're going to talk about the breaking news that just came out. Obviously, you're going to start to get more and more things like this as free agency is fast approaching and the Giants are trying to get under the budget. And this was something that I think we all knew was very possible. And before I get further into the video, just wanted to mention License Plate Guy actually reached out to me on Twitter. Incredibly humbled that he takes the time out of his day. Of course, a New York Giants fan, legend. He's been on the channel before. He's going to be on the channel again. I think we're working towards Friday, but we got to make sure that we're both available at the same time. But he will be back on the channel. We'll talk about the upcoming free agency. We'll talk about the draft. So super excited to have LPG back on the channel. But in this video, we're going to talk about the news that came out about Kevin Zeitler. And listen, Zeitler to me is our most experienced offensive lineman. He's a guy that I wanted to have back with the New York Giants. I'm going to start this video by saying that. I absolutely wanted Kevin Zeitler back. I did not want him back on the $14.5 million salary for the simple reason it was taking up about 8% of our available cap space, and we just couldn't afford for that to be the case. I wanted the Giants to do everything in their power to try to restructure Zeitler. Of course, there were rumors that came out about a week ago that the New York Giants were exploring trade opportunities to try to move on from Zeitler, to which I said to my subscribers in the live streams that I never thought it was in the cards. I never thought that we were going to be able to get enough for Kevin Zeitler, for Kevin Zeitler based on the money that he was making and the shrunken market. It just didn't make any sense. So I cannot get on the New York Giants for not being able to get anything for Zeitler. You look at all these other guards that have been dropped, right? There's been a number of guards, a number of players that have been dropped around the league. And I think as fans, we have to realize that, and we have to be reasonable and realize that he was by far the biggest cap savings for the New York Giants. Am I happy about it? No, I would have liked to restructure him. But there are things the New York Giants can do, and I'm sure they have a plan in place to try to figure this out. And for me to fully evaluate this decision, it would not be fair, and in my opinion, it's not fair by fans until such time we see the things that the New York Giants do to fill that void, whether it be in the draft or whether it be bringing in a more cost-effective free agent interior offensive lineman, whether that be a center or a guard. You obviously have the ability to move Nick Gates over to the guard if you feel like you could get a better quality center. And we all know the market will be flooded with a number of positions. So yes, I can understand from my financial standpoint where the New York Giants are coming from. I mean, for God's sakes, we're $8 million over the cap. And, you know, I completely understand why they brought back Leonard Williams, and I completely understand why we're in the situation that we're in. And we have a lot of cap space next year, but that does not help you for this year. And Zeitler, obviously, with this being the case, and we're going to pull up the tweet from Dan Duggan, the Giants didn't view him as a part of their future. They have Will Hernandez. They have Shane Lemieux. They drafted Lemieux last year in the 5th round. They gave him opportunities to start. That may have been a hint that they were looking to potentially move on from Zeitler, knowing that this was a realistic possibility. But by no means do I think the New York Giants will not add to this offensive line. I don't think you have a finished product on this offensive line. I think they'll either be drafting a guard or a center early in this year's draft. I'm talking round 2. Or they will be looking to sign a more cost-effective offensive lineman in free agency. Of course, we also brought in the center. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, formerly of the New York Jets, on a cheap contract, but I don't expect him to start. I think he's more of a depth piece. I would be more than a little concerned if the New York Giants went into next year with Hernandez and Zeitler, and Lemieux as the 2 starting guards. I think the Giants have to find a way to get that situated and get somebody in here with more experience, or at least spend a premium pick at that position. But let's jump into the exact tweet from Dan Duggan. Now, I've seen some conflicting reports on Twitter, to which I'm surprised, because I've seen it on Spot Track all along that the New York Giants were going to save $12 million if they were to cut Kevin Zeitler. That's exactly what Dan Duggan said. But I think I saw Rappaport said it would be 10. I think I saw Alex Wilson said it would be 9.6. So I don't want to give you false information. I'm seeing different numbers all over the place, and maybe there's a reason why it's not 12. But according to Dan and according to Spot Track, the savings will be $12 million. And here is what he had to say. $14.5 million cap hit was prohibitive. This creates $12 million in cap savings, $2.5 million of dead money. The Giants should be able to find an adequate replacement much cheaper. But cutting ties with their once proven offensive lineman is tough to stomach. And like I said, yes, it sucks. It absolutely sucks. But as fans, I think you have to be reasonable and have to realize that this is going around all over the league. It's not just with the New York Giants. And there is no way the Giants or any of these teams that are having to do this could have anticipated the pandemic. and could have anticipated that they would have $40 million less to work with. Zeitler was good with the Giants last year. Was he great? No. He was better his first year. Definitely would have welcomed him back. I definitely wanted him back. I wanted him restructured. I wanted him to take $6 or $7 million off of this year's salary and give him an extension. We don't know if Zeitler was willing to do that. And we don't know if the New York Giants wanted to back up their books. What this tells me, more than likely, especially because Gettleman drafted him, Will Hernandez may very well be in the New York Giants' long-term plans to give him an extension after this year. Of course, that is dependent on how he plays this year if he does get the opportunity to be the starting guard. I was outspoken in saying last year that I thought Hernandez should have been starting over Lemieux. Well, right now, those would be your two starters at the guard position. Obviously, there's still some things the Giants could do. There's a number of big names out there on the open market, and I'm sure we'll start to hear rumors of some of the guards that the New York Giants may be interested in. I don't got to go over it with you guys. You guys know the names by now if you follow this closely, but there is a number of guards that have been cut, and also other interior offensive linemen. And if they don't address it in free agency, they could potentially address it in the draft. Now, a lot of people I've seen on Twitter are going crazy and saying, oh, they're freeing up money to get Kenny Golladay. I don't necessarily think that is the case. They may be freeing up money to have the opportunity to open themselves up to potentially bring in some other players. I still think they need to be able to extend Leo Williams before something like that even becomes a possibility. And, when you make a cut somewhere else to add somewhere else, let's just say they got Golladay, that just creates another hole. And it's an important one. I think fans, because it's not a flashy position, because it's not a wide receiver, it's not a running back, it's not an edge rusher, maybe overlooking that. An interior offensive lineman is very important. And for a young offensive line to lose one of their leaders, Zeitler's one of the more experienced players on this offensive line, yes, it could definitely affect us. And I would prefer to get somebody with experience on this offensive line. Like I said, it's very hard for me to judge this until such time I see the whole plan carried out. It's easy to come on here as fans and go crazy about this decision. We don't know what they're going to do. We don't know if they're going to use some of that money now to bring in an experienced guard on a much lower cost to be able to help other areas on this roster. So let's see the plan play out. Let's see what they do in free agency. And if they don't decide to address it in free agency, you have to think, as a Giants fan, they would address the interior offensive lineman no later than the second or the third round. But as the process continued to go on, I think it became more and more apparent that Kevin Zeitler more than likely would not be back in a New York Giants uniform. And the reason is simple. It's easy. The guy was making $14.5 million, and he saves us $12.5 million if we were to cut him. It was by far our biggest savings on this year's market. We were negative $8 million of cap space. Now we're plus 4.5. And there's still a ton of other things they could do. Nate Solder, you're up next. And it will either be a restructure or he will be cut. And we'll see what the New York Giants decide to do there. But if you cut Solder, much like I said with Zeitler, that just creates another hole. You're going to need to get a swing tackle. So the Giants, we'll see what they decide to do. We'll see what plan they carry out in free agency. Me as a fan, I am hoping that they add a guard in free agency. I think we could use an experienced player at that position. And I'd like Lemieux, at least going into the year, to provide his depth. But that may not be the case. We may have Shane, we may have Will on the offensive line. You heard Gettleman yesterday saying that at some point, I think you have to get these young guys in there and you have to let them grow. And maybe that'll be the case. I'll say this. I'm a Giants fan. I'm going to root for them to get the job done. I would be going in shaky if our offensive line opening day had Hernandez and Lemieux at the two starting guard spots. But we still have a lot of time for the Giants to fill out the rest of this roster. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.